Well, hey everybody. My name is Jared Malott, and I'm here with my good friend Mateo Calise, and this is the Coltist number 8. We didn't really decide on a topic, but it is sort of like the doldrums of summer.
Yeah,
So it's probably better that we call this like the early summer update, right? We're after the
yeah,
NBA draft, after the draft lottery, before the actual NBA draft. It's after the NFL draft. It's before training camp, but after rookie mini camp. So it is kind of in the no man's land, right?
yeah.
That's what we should call this, is no man's land. That's
Yeah,
where
no,
we
it's
are right
probably
now.
the most boring time to be
Yeah.
a sports fan.
Yeah.
At least if you're teaming, like the Pacers are not in the playoffs, so it's just you're just waiting. You're just waiting for the NBA
Absolutely.
draft and waiting for training camp, then waiting for the NFL regular season to start back again, and it's a boring time of the year.
Yeah. For a lot of people. I'm enjoying the NBA playoffs. And then as far we always do this in order, brother. So we always talk about the Colts first. The podcast is called The Coltist. We do talk about the Indianapolis Colts and Indiana Pacers on this podcast. Um, it's going to be a little more difficult to do that when there's not a ton of going on, right? And
Yeah,
the most newsworthy thing that's come along actually happened today. Garner Minshew is doing a an interview after practice, and he just looked doe-eyed, like he just, man, the ball really jumps off of his hand, talking about Anthony Richardson. And then also, it appears like Anthony Richardson's a lot farther along than a lot of people thought, which obviously bodes well for the Colts. That's all good news, baby. It's all coming up roses, and we'll take it. But yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Like, wow, that ball really jumps off his hand. And then, of course, like they're saying, like, hey, he's actually a good quarterback, not just like he's a big athlete out there running around. Like,
yeah,
no, like making plays within the pocket, which a lot of people thought that was going to be his weakness, right?
yeah.
Was he's didn't have enough time. Everybody said. I'll always argue. First of all, the SEC counts double, and that is mostly a joke. The SEC counts double, and then if you're able to show improvement, 10 games, I could figure you out. If you're at playing Division 1, and then you are able to show he's not making the same mistakes over and over. You know what I mean? He's matriculating the ball down the field on his own, scoring
Yeah.
touchdowns. Like, you could figure that out in 10 games. So again, one of the things that they will always talk about, no matter what happens to Anthony Richardson, is that the guy only started 13 games in college. And I'm telling you, that's plenty. It's plenty, because there are guys, for the record, I would much rather be the best athlete at my position in the class with the least amount of starts than be the guy like Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, who has like 5 to 6 years under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, he's a war torn war. I mean, he's a warrior, right? But
Yeah, he has.
is he gonna be an NFL starter for his whole career? No, I don't think he's. I just have a feeling that anybody under 6'3", 220 pounds is a liability, and that's about to flesh itself out in front of everybody. Um, and there are exceptions to that, like a Lamar Jackson, right? And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
your
highly of
freak
like a Jared
athletes.
Goff is going to be fine, even though he's a little wiry. Kyler Murray's a little down there, but he's a little thicker for being how short he is, and a little more of an athlete. So, like I said, I actually saw I think it was Mike Freeman? Somebody on Twitter today was talking about how many pocket passers are there actually left in the NFL. And it's really like Kirk Cousins. You know what I mean? Like, who's really back there that isn't a premier athlete, right? So obviously today, when it comes out that Gardner Minshew, the guy that was signed to be the kind of bridge starter for the Colts, I don't know about you. I thought that was the expectation. I was fine with it. You know what I mean? Oh, he starts week 1. That's Jacksonville. Why the fuck wouldn't you want the guy that you gets drafted by them playing against them? Like, hell yeah, if
Yeah,
he's ready to go and he's the best option, yes, we're gonna be just fine, right? But now we're hearing like No, actually, like the man from day one is Anthony Richardson. I mean, does that erase your expectations for this season now?
Nah, not at, I mean, I just wanted to clarify that I was really surprised. I don't know if you've been reading, like in the off season, I usually don't read much about like what the rest of the NFL is thinking about us. I just focus on Colts related content.
Yeah,
And it surprised me, to see how bad the rest of the NFL, writers and so-called experts
yeah.
think we are. We are currently, I mean, it's way too early, and of course, the NFL is rather unpredictable. But I was
Mhm.
surprised, first of all, the hate we were getting, like they were putting us in the same, in the same like level as the Texans, saying like, okay, this is a team that's going to be picking top three next year again. And
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not I'm not sure about that. I mean, I'm not
No.
saying we are Super Bowl contenders right away. I'm
Mm-mm.
not saying that at all.
No.
But I'm saying like this was a good roster that was held back by injuries and by, bad quarterback play and the
Hmm.
coaching changes in the middle. And
Hmm.
you solve the head coaching position. You have an athlete at quarterback and you have a head coach that could maximize his talents. So again, I'm not saying, we are going to the Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback, but I'm saying
Right.
like I think this roster is good enough for 8 wins at least,
Yeah.
in like base case scenario.
Yeah.
And then I was also surprised, how, for the Colts media, Anthony Richardson was having a great camp and he's a great prospect and he's a great player and great leader.
Yeah.
And you go around the NFL and that there seems to be like sort of a consensus around him, like, oh, he's going to be a bust for sure. Like, forget about that. He's just a guy that like he's a glorified halfback at quarterback that only will be able to run the option and nothing else.
Hmm.
And I was like, do these guys even watch the film
No.
or just? I'm
Nope.
not. I'm not trying to accuse anyone of being racist. Like I don't want to. I don't want to say that. But on the other hand, I sort of thought like, or did they just go like, okay, this is a black quarterback that went to
Right.
Florida that runs fast, so yeah, he can throw the ball. Like that's the. uh, And I
I
thought
mean,
like,
that's
did you
exactly what
guys?
it is. Because here's the thing, I never see somebody saying like, this is why he's going to be bad. And here's the college film that I have on him. Here's some film of him making mistakes. Nope, you don't see that.
Yeah,
Usually when somebody talk, here's what I've noticed. Like the only people talking bad about people are non-athletes because
yeah.
anybody that played the position, coached the position, scout the position is going to give you a much more reasonable take on a quarterback, right? Like I would be nervous trotting out Anthony Richardson with only 13 college starts as my starter week one. That's a legitimate concern based on like a rational argument, right? That's not what you get on the internet. That's what people say on the internet. They say like way dumber shit that it makes no sense. And may God have mercy on our souls for having to have listened to that, right? There's way too many people getting way too loud about way too dumb as shit. That's the problem. And I have to abstain. And I'm like, oh, I'm a nobody. I got to remember that. I ain't nobody, right? But I
Yeah.
did want to point out, make sure we say it on our podcast. I did get selected for scout school through the New York Jets with Phil Savage. Name drop. Did you like me name dropping the fuck out of that? And then also later this month, I'll be getting my third football coaching certification from Soldiers to Sidelines, which is a 501(c)(3) aimed at putting veterans on high school football sidelines as coaches. That was the original purpose of the business. They apparently have a different dream for me. So here we go. Obviously, thank you to them ahead of time for whatever happens. I don't even know at this point. I'm just along for the ride. But yeah, it is obviously a slow news week. Anytime we're talking about like we don't have film because it's not like it was any part of uh training that we could see. Um, we're not at the point where they're coming in for training camp. We can't even talk about outfits. There's none of this. Um, I did see a little video of Anthony Richardson kind of vibing out, and it's like, you know who Anthony Richardson's going to get along with really well? Shaq
Cool.
Leonard. They're going to get along very well because they're both like very into music and kind of dancing around, vibing around, and I'm like, they're gonna have that team lit up. And again, I'm also a measured person, so I know I've sat here on the past where the Colts had worse teams and said they were going to have a better record. I can tell you that right now. I've sat here in the past, and this team has been in a worse spot, and I've said they're going to win 10 games, right? It's happened. And I'm not doing that. So that's not, I'm not like changing my tune. It's just I want I want to be a little more reasonable about this because I have seen some unreasonable shit. It's just like you said. I seen your Colts fanboys that are too high on us and they got
Yeah.
us winning like 11, 12 fucking games, being like 3, 4 seed in the AFC. And I just want whatever you're smoking. I just want that for the weekend. And then there are people that are way too low on the Colts, like you said, man, down there with Houston. And it's like Houston needs so many pieces
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
really think about this and you go back and it's like, look at the last 7 games from the Colts, 6, 7 games, and tell me that they don't need a rotational piece on offensive line and defensive line. So they needed a body, maybe not a starter, but they needed a body. And then JT was dinged up last year a lot, so he don't really count. Shaq was dinged up last year, he don't really count,
Yeah.
right? And then it's almost like we had a really good number one corner, and he ended up not mattering, right? Like he was there, he was right there in coverage on the guy, and it's like sometimes it don't matter. And that's part of the reason I think that he was let go. Obviously, he wanted to go play and win a championship. He didn't want to be a part of that, rebuilding shit, whatever. I hope he's kicking himself, right? Even though the Colts traded him and got a 5th round pick out of that, whatever. Um, I hope he ends up kicking himself, and I hope Anthony Richardson. I hope he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. I really do, because I really
Yeah.
think in the next 3 to 5 years, it's just like Brett said in our Discord today. I actually think there's a chance he could be the best player in the draft the next like 3 to 5 years. You'll look back like, damn, he was that much better than everybody else. Um, and that has a lot to do, in my opinion, with what happened with Jalen Carter and him falling to 9. Because up until that, he has his head on straight. All that garbage doesn't happen. Right? I imagine he goes higher than he did, and then the draft is much different. So we've talked about this for months, where I felt like, especially since the combine, so well before the draft, that I'd never seen a 10.0 at quarterback on the RAS. And it's like, if he's
Yeah.
how are you justifying not drafting him at 1 or 2 or 3? And then for him, and again, Chris Ballard did tell you that he was going to be available. I think we're going to get the best player in the class, and he said it matter of factly. And it's like, I think you know how we always say that, like I know we're just dum dums, but like they had to be thinking the same thing we are. There's no way 4 quarterbacks get picked in a
Yeah.
row. What are the
Yeah.
odds of that? And then all it has to happen is one non-quarterback gets drafted ahead of us, and then we have a pick, right? A choice, right? Because again, remember, kids, the Colts were Anthony Richardson getting poached from the Colts having to draft Will Levis with that 4th pick. So think about that as, by the way, I hope I'm right with that. Is Stetson Bennett, did he go to Tennessee too
Nah,
with
he
Will Levis?
went to the Rams.
Into the Rams. I
He
saw
was a
Stetson
fourth
Bennett.
rounder to the Los Angeles.
I saw him throwing
Yeah, I mean,
around today. He looks pretty good at arms live. Again, I don't know that he's ever going to be the guy, but he did show a little bit of a live arm, and I thought, man, Stafford's got a bad back. You never know
yeah,
um,
you never know with a bad back. But
when that could be a problem. But yeah, let's talk about the Pacers and get out of here. So,
yeah, that's much more exciting. I just want to say this before we started. I had a dream, the night before, like it was Monday, and I dreamt that we had the number one overall pick.
mm,
And I just have to say, I'm fine with 7. You can't complain. You're like, okay, it could be worse,
it could always be worse.
but it can always be worse. But for a minute, I was just thinking like, this has to be us, man. This has to be us.
Right.
And you start working yourself up. Thinking perhaps now is the time. All this suffering. we had a meeting and we are getting lucky, and then we were at 7. I was like, yeah, we are the Pacers. We nothing nice is meant for us, you know. But yeah, we endure. We carry on. But it was kind of fun.
Yeah, when they were counting down, I mean, obviously, I know that it was predetermined that everyone else on that stage knew the order, except for the audience. And then up to the seventh pick as they descended, I'm like, don't say the Pacers. Don't say the and they didn't say the Pacers. I'm like, oh my God. Like you said, there was really like a moment where I was kind of floating where I was like, oh my God. Like and then of course like they went seven and I was like, damn. And in the aftermath, um, the thought that I came away was after you and I chatted about the roster, I was like, I'm on team trade up. Wow, what a unique spot to
Yeah,
be in, and usually we're talking about the Colts and we're talking about being comfortable trading back because that's what Chris Ballard wants to do because we need bodies, we need shots at replacing starters. Um, with the NBA, continuity is even
yeah. You
more
need to trade
important.
up.
You need to trade up because you more like need one guy or maybe one and a half people. And when I say one and a half, I mean like you need a starter and then you need a guy that makes it on the roster. You know what I mean? So could trade two or more of those picks and move up, and also have the 32nd pick. So it's like they have five picks in the draft and five in the and four in the top 32, and I think you're gonna trade two or three of them, all four of them. Should I clear all four of the
Yeah,
picks and move up and get
yeah. I
inside the
would
top
definitely do
three?
that.
To start making some noise in a draft because I think that there's enough base talent on the team between um, Halliburton, Matherin. Um, I think if you just stay there in terms of their youth, right? These are super young starter level players that could easily. I mean, you hope you don't lose either of them at a to going somewhere else and playing, but like you can build around these ones and twos. These are ones and
Yeah,
twos, and these are built around players. And I think, as much as I love Miles Turner, it's like you don't know what you're getting night to night. So it's like he's not on the same he isn't as consistent as a Matherin was or as consistent as a Halliburton was because Halliburton's just got to become a little more durable. That's one of the things about smaller guards is that there's a lot of wear and tear in the NBA. You are playing on a hardwood floor. You are diving around on a hardwood floor. It's just as bad as a football field. Not really. Um, but yeah, the I'm with you on feeling like it was our time, right? Like, man, should really happen for us. Uh,
yeah. But
and then when they
I mean,
get seventh,
I'm
it's like you could trade up with that chip, you know?
yeah. You can trade up. I mean, like we were discussing, you know, like you said, the state of the roster and the quality of the players we have, and I was like, hey, you know, if you say, for example, you know, I was just thinking about and we talked about this, what would an ideal off season for the Pacers look like? And in my opinion, you know, I was like, okay, perhaps trade up, get Brandon Miller, who is, you know, opinion the guy to get. And then if you can sign a player like, say, Jeremy Grant, or trade for a guy like PJ Washington, and you round up that roster, because I thought, you know, the Pacers, if Tyrese is healthy and, you know, Mathurin, you know, develops, I'm not saying he develops into an all-star overnight, but he just continues developing into a solid player overall and a guy who can start. And then, you know, you get that three spot, that number four spot, you get a guy that can play there, because last season, you know, we were stuck with Jalen Smith and Chris Duarte, who are, you know, they are not guys ideally who should be starting for you.
Yeah,
And then, you know, like we were saying, you could easily be looking like at a top three, top four team in the Eastern Conference, because you don't have much competition there are than you know, the Sixers. And if James Harden leaves, then it's, you know, it's not that good of a team. Then you have the Celtics, of course, and you have the Milwaukee Bucks, who will, of course, be dominant. But other than those two, you know, you're like, okay, this is a team that could surprise a few people. And
yeah,
perhaps even, I would even go as far as saying I like the odds of, you know, the Pacers perhaps even winning a playoff series finally, you know, next
right.
year. I think it could
It's cer
realistically happen.
Yeah, I would say it's certainly possible for what feels like the first time in a long time because
Yeah,
what you look at year to year is win differential, and without overspending. So that's one of the things that I look at. I don't know about you. Look at is a team actually improving? If they went out and bought a player and they got better, that doesn't actually happen that often. So it's not something we look forward to happening because it's just not usual. That's not what usually happens. What usually happens is like you'll be bad for a while and the team will get better over time. And the Pacers won 10 more games this year than they did last year. That's a really big improvement, right? That's more than 10% because it's an 82 game season. So improving by your win total by 10 games when your starting point guard was out a lot. And I think that their rotation was a little wonky because it was like very much looking at potentially starting Halliburton and Matherin when they're very new to this. And I feel like that could have gone a lot different if Matherin doesn't get a lot of confidence building minutes because that's what he got a lot of minutes where he was the best player on the floor at this level, and that's going to build your confidence a ton. And it's going to inspire you to work a lot in the off season. So that's what I kind of looked at. Um, a lot of people, I've heard a lot of people say, again, it's like you said, talk about the Colts saying the Colts are one of the best or one of the worst rosters in the league. People saying the same shit about the Pacers. Oh, they're all trash. Trade everybody. You need all them picks. Get better at evaluating people. You know what I mean? I don't agree with that. I think the Pacers have done really good at developing the talent that they've had. It's
yeah,
been actually kind of unfortunate, when you really think and you look back, like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, like you think like you could have
yeah.
had them on this
Even
team.
even
Like,
I mean, yeah, Victor had the injury troubles, but
yeah, right.
before the injuries, he was an all NBA caliber player.
Yeah. Love Victor Oladipo, man. I just hate to see the injury bug bite him in. Um, it's just unfortunate. I felt that way. I remember when Derrick Rose got hurt. And that put me in a downward spiral because it's not that I want anybody to replace Michael Jordan. It's that he had the same kind of mystique, right? Like there was just some about Derrick Rose, and that's not to take anything away from the dude's played in the league for ever. He's still balling.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I think it's like you said. I think if you really look at the Pacers, it's like a 3-4, like you were saying, like a Brandon Miller. It's a trade up. It's an integral piece, and it's hope and it's hope Victor Wembanyama has a lot of leg cramps, and that because he's tall and long, he's got a lot of leg.
yeah,
And hope he has leg cramps his whole career or some shit. Um, because I mean, when you watch uh, Victor Wembanyama play basketball, you're like, how do you guard that with confidence? Like, because he could play inside out face up with the back to the basket, up top, down low, it don't matter. And then on defense, he's not a total liability. You know what I mean? Like he's
yeah,
actually a pretty effective defender. Obviously he was the get. I'm actually glad that the San Antonio Spurs got him or like have the opportunity to draft him. I grew up a David
yeah.
Robinson fan. I love Tim Duncan and fucking Tony Parker. So why wouldn't you? And I like Greg Popovich too. So like so I did see somebody made a meme of him running back to sign an extension. Obviously, that's funny as hell.
Yeah, now
Um,
that he gets the chance to,
now he gets a
yeah,
chance to coach women, yeah. Um, but you never know what happens, and a lot of people are also Pacers fans that are like pretty beat up about we didn't get the first pick, and it's like we have a 6% chance for that to happen. And so, like, if anybody was out there that's really burnt up because the Pacers didn't get a better than the seventh pick, like there was like less than a 5% chance that was going to happen for us. Um, so not wise. Uh, and uh, and yeah, I mean, like we said, we are really kind of in the doldrums of summer. There's not a lot on the table. The draft's over. We talked about it. The we There's really not a lot to talk about in terms of the NBA draft because they're in the middle of a lot of combine workouts right now. So you got to kind of wait till the dust clears on that. It'll be summer league um,
Yeah,
to talk about. But we're a month out from the NBA draft. I think we're probably about 2 months out from the NFL training camp starting. So it's like we
yeah,
said, it's going to be every couple weeks to try to get together. I figure next week we could go into a little more in depth into what we anticipate will happen, like with the draft as we move closer
yeah.
to
What
that.
the NBA
It'd
draft
be
is going to
great.
look like.
Obviously,
Yeah,
I love having a podcast right after something happens. Like, hey, we get to kind of early react. But I'm not gonna plan my life around breaking news. That's crazy. So
yeah. It's
we'll
impossible.
just plan on meeting every couple weeks. We've been pretty good at meeting on a Thursday evening after work to knock out
Yeah,
some time with you all. But yeah, if you haven't already and you listen to this whole podcast, you should like this and you should subscribe to my channel. A lot of things, I wouldn't say a lot of things going on. Some things are going on and might change
yeah.
quickly and
Yeah,
quickly.
small.
And um, I may quickly go from like working a full-time job, chasing a passion as a journalist, wind up as an NFL scout. You never, you never
You
know.
never know. You never
So,
know.
hey, either way, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just saying, like, could go from, I don't even know what it pays. It's probably like what they pay. They probably treat NFL scouts like they do teachers or some shit, and it's like undesirable.
Yeah,
So that's That's probably what it is. Nobody ever takes you serious. You have to watch like 3,000 hours of film. They pick one guy. He gets hurt like week two and never plays again. You get fired, and yeah, your
yeah. And
career's
then you're
over.
out.
So there's me foreshadowing for you. So anyway, this has been Jared Malott with Stampede Blue and Mateo Calise. This is the Coltist, an Indianapolis Colts and Indiana Pacers podcast. Hey, y'all. We'll see you in a couple weeks.